gentlemen, welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets. Now here are your hosts, Tim McMaster and Connor Hughes. Listen safely.
Can't wait.
We are back. Tom Brady is once again Super Bowl champion, so really nothing's changed in the NFL since you last heard from us. It's been a fairly quiet 2 weeks for the Jets, which makes total sense because Marissa's been on vacation, and breaking news does not happen when Marissa isn't around to produce a podcast about it. As always, thanks for listening and watching. I'm Tim McMaster along with Connor Hughes and the aforementioned Marissa Morris. Please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple as well. Lots to get to today. More on the Jets quarterbacking situation. We're just going to keep talking about that because, Deshaun Watson, what they do with the draft, Sam Darnold, all that stuff. We'll also get into the coaching staff a little bit as well. But Marissa, first off, 2 weeks off. What'd you do?
Literally nothing. It was great. I just said I really didn't open my computer at all, which was very nice. I watched I'm watching The Sopranos.
Before Game of Thrones. Oh my God.
I'm on season 4 of The Sopranos, which took up a lot of my time, which was pretty nice. It snowed a lot. I feel like it doesn't stop snowing. I'm ready for some nice weather. I'm ready for summer. It's snowing right now again. Hopefully this week will be a little better. But yeah, not too much. It was a pretty quiet week. What about you guys?
Are you back from Cleveland now? Or are you still
I am
out
back.
there?
I am back in Jersey. Yes.
You did the Hall of Fame. You did that too.
You went to the
Hall of Fame.
Thing.
Michael's jersey's in there?
The only thing I really did, aside from watch TV, it was pretty boring 2 weeks off, but I did go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. That was very cool. It's actually the first time I haven't been to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And that's like, I wanted to go this past summer when Jeter was going to get inducted, lifelong Jeter fan. But
can we talk about your old middle school project where you were like, would you say you were going to marry Derek Jeter? You were going to marry Derek Jeter. What was like the Derek Jeter project you sent us?
Derek Jeter was my role everything as a kid. Like Derek Jeter.
Michael Dunn before Michael Dunn.
Yes. I wanted to get into sports. Just the Yankees, the way he played the game, champion, there's not enough to say about Derek Jeter if you ask me. But yeah, the Pro Football Hall of Fame was really cool. Got to see all the different exhibits they had. The busts were really cool. Like walking that whole alley they have of everyone's faces is really awesome. They had a lot of cool stuff from this season too. Like they had exhibits from this season, which was nice. It was pretty empty, which was good. But yeah, it was a cool experience. I definitely recommend it to anybody who's going through Ohio for sure.
I think that the Football Hall of Fame, I rank it as number 2 in the Hall of Fames behind. I mean, there's something about the Baseball Hall of Fame and the town of Cooperstown overall that's just it's really unique. It's such a small town and everything just points to the Baseball Hall of Fame. So that's number 1. But Canton is really cool. You said there was nobody there when you were there. Obviously, that's partially because of the pandemic. I actually went to Canton when I was driving from my hometown of Massachusetts out to South Dakota to take my first job out of college way out in South Dakota. And I stopped in Canton just to go, but I stayed there overnight the night before. So I went at on a Wednesday at 8 a.m. Same thing. Nobody was there. It was so cool being in a museum like that, a Hall of Fame with nobody else around. But that's number 2, I think. Hockey's pretty cool in Toronto. That's 3. And then number 4, the Basketball Hall of Fame it's not great. It's definitely not great. They got some work to do there in
my
Springfield,
favorite thing
Massachusetts.
actually was the rings. Was really cool
to
see the different how the Super Bowl rings have started and where they are now and how many carats and how big they've gotten. It's unreal.
I feel like this is a sub comment to Michael. I feel like you might be I think we might be talking Michael in this chat. I think we just pivoted.
Very cool. Or the equipment, how the equipment has evolved, what shoulder pads and helmets and stuff like that were it was cool. It was a good experience. So ready to get back in the swing of things now that vacation's over.
And Connor just played video games for 2 weeks, so we're all good.
I have logged so many hours into Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I don't know who it was on Twitter when I said, should I get this? Is it worth it? And they were like, oh my God, yes, just it's going to consume your life. It has absolutely consumed my life. I'm a Viking. I am a Viking now, and I am just absolutely in love with it. I'm making my way throughout Mercia right now. I'm building my clan. I'm building up my settlement. I'm Igor or whatever the guy's name is. I got an awesome face tattoo. I got tattoos all over. Oh my God, I love the game. Can't recommend it enough. It's how I'm getting through all of the latest, all the consistent and incessant hate mail that I keep getting from Jets Nation. This just taking out my anger and frustrations as a Viking in Assassin's Creed Valhalla is how I'm dealing with my newfound stress.
We should open that up. Like, what does Connor Hughes need to do to win back gangrene? Like, what is the secret? Let us know if you have any ideas, because the fan base has turned. Luckily, I guess they hate listen to this podcast, Connor. So luckily, we're at least still having people tune in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess what I didn't assume is that when the Public Enemy #1 was disbanded from the beat, that I would assume all I would assume all of that negative energy right on my shoulders. And like the crazy thing is that like the funniest thing, I like this comment that we've got up here now. That'll be nice and make me feel good. My funniest thing is like I don't think I've been like overly critical. I haven't been overly harsh. Like I've always said, I think the Jets should go after and get Deshaun Watson. I think the Jets should do this. I've been like, we went on that whole spiel, kit and caboodle about how awesome it is now that there's optimism, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, people are really, really angry with me. They're very, very angry. My favorite comment, I will say, the absolute best comment that I've had was the one off of this mailbag, and I think you saw it, Tim, which was when I did a mailbag, and one of a Jet fan asked me a question about like, should the Jets consider trading Quinnen Williams, which we could discuss here, which I think is like a really good topic. I didn't even think to put this in the rundown because of how angry it made everyone. But it was like, should the Jets consider trading,
including Mackay Becton,
yeah, right,
who retweeted Connor and said, like, no way.
Yeah, it was like should the Jets consider including Quinnen Williams in a trade package if it means that they'll get Deshaun Watson? And like I tweeted it out because that was like the best question I thought I got answered. It was the most interesting question I thought I got asked. And so I was like, all right, yeah, we're going to throw that one out there. And somebody comments on it. They go, this is typical Connor clickbait. I was like, man, it's a mailbag. It's a mailbag where I'm answering your questions. It's not even me. Like, I didn't think like, oh, I'm going to like, this is something that might happen. It was like, you asked me the question. I answered your questions. Like, clickbait, Connor, back at it again. I was like, oh man, here we go. That's just what it's been like the last.
Then you got backed up a little bit. Somebody said haters gonna hate, but yes, absolutely. It's been a tough time for you, but they'll be back with you for the season. I think. You'll get through
week
this.
1.
All right,
until Zach Wilson's first interception. That's gonna be all my fault too.
All right, and that is a perfect transition into our first topic, which is the many roads to a quarterback for the Jets in 2021, which we've talked about, but we'll continue to do it, like I said, until, after the draft, when we figure out who is going to be the quarterback for the New York Jets in 2021. I guess we start with Watson. Texans continue to say they're not trading him. The Bears are lining up. It seems like the Panthers, who Watson, they're not on his list, but the Panthers seem all in. The 49ers still. All those teams seem to be more interested, just from what you hear from the rumors, than the Jets are. We still imagine that the Jets would at least kick the tires. But right now, the Texans say we're not trading him. That has to be just a ploy at this point, right, Connor? I mean, you can't you can't bring the guy back. You just can't. I mean, the Texans have made plenty of mistakes over the last few years, but that would be the ultimate, to bring back a disgruntled Deshaun Watson to run your offense with a new coach and a new front office. Ugh.
Especially after getting rid of Watt. The Watt thing was also financially involved. Like it was, JJ Watt's still a good player, but JJ Watt's not the player that he once was. And JJ Watt's not a player that was, I think, worthy of the contract that he was going to get from the Texans. So, Houston definitely could have traded him. They could have, and we've heard those reports come out. And Houston absolutely could have gotten a 4th or a 5th for Watt from some team that wanted to add him, a contender, thinking maybe they could squeeze last little juice out of the lemon and see if they couldn't, use him to help them make a run at a Super Bowl or at a Lombardi trophy. But I think it's obvious that they needed cap space. They needed to move down, and moving on from JJ Watt was like an obvious way to do it. But for him to leave and then keep Watson, it's confusing. Now, I can say that I've made calls to people that I know around the league, executives I know around the league, and I've asked them about the Watson thing. Is like, are they actually going to trade him? Are they actually going to trade him? And one person that I trust a lot has made it very clear that he doesn't see any way that they actually trade him, and that everything that he has heard is that the Texans are standing standing firm on we are not going to trade him. Now that can obviously change. We've seen it happen a million times around the NFL. I mean, the Dave Gettleman said we didn't sign Odell Beckham to trade him, and then traded him like 3 weeks later. You know, you've had even I can't the one off the top of my head. I mean, but you hear it all the time. You see it all the time where teams take one stance. Carson Wentz. Howie Roseman came out right after the season on Carson Wentz and said, like, what was his quote? Like, playing without Carson Wentz would be like not having fingers on your hand, or some really, really weird remark that he said. And it was like, oh, I guess they're keeping him. They fire the head coach that didn't get along with Carson Wentz, and then 2 months later they trade Carson Wentz anyway. So I mean, it does happen. I mean, people can say, like, you know, or teams can say, we believe this guy, we want to trade him, and it work. And then eventually you get to a point where you say it's not going to work and you deal him away. Now, the wild thing is that, and we've said it on the podcast before, and I've written it before, is that there is no anything to compare this situation with Watson to, because you don't see guys like him available. I was just talking to who's going to be my father-in-law about this, and we were talking about it last night, because he's a big Eagles fan. Like Bree's family is from Philadelphia, so they're big Eagle fans, and they were talking about the Wentz trade and then comparing it to Watson. And I was like, I know you can say, like, oh, Stafford went for 2 1s, and Wentz basically got a 1 and a 3, because that first round pick, I mean, as long as he doesn't blow his ACL out, that's going to be a first round pick. Like, oh, I mean, there's no comparing the Watson situation too. I mean, because this guy is a 25-year-old in the prime of his career who is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And he's somebody that you can say he'll still be able to play when he's 37, 38 years old. So if he's 25 now, you're talking about a guy that if you trade and get him, you've got a franchise quarterback for the next 12, 13, 14, maybe 15 years. I mean, that's how good this guy can be, because he's not, while he's an athletic quarterback, his strong play is not predicated on his athletic ability. You know, like when Russell Wilson's athleticism goes, he's not going to be the same quarterback. He's not going to be able to run around anymore. I mean, Deshaun Watson's deadly accurate, got the really strong arm, can move within the pot. Like, he's the complete package. So you never have players like him available to be traded for. They're always up there in age, or there's red flag injury concerns, or there's personality red flags. There's none of that with him. So you can't look at any other situation and say, oh, well, this guy went for that, so this is what it'll cost, because guys like him are just never available. And eventually what I think the Texans are going to see is, and what they could I mean, look, they can stick to their guns. If that's what people around the league have told me, that they're the Texans to this point, they're telling everyone the calls, we're not trading them. They're telling everyone we're not calls, we're not trading them. But eventually it's going to get to the point where I think they could say, look, we're heading into a full-on rebuild. We're a team that we just got rid of J.J. Watt. Will Fuller's a free agent. We need this, we need that. We're not, if this guy's going to be miserable, let's expedite our rebuild and trade him away and get picks. And if they do make the decision to, okay, you know what, let's hear what you guys got. What would you give us for Deshaun Watson? If it gets to that point, I mean, there's no price somebody's not going to be willing to pay. I mean, you're going to start at 3 first-round picks and then some, but it'll then expand from there. And there's going to be such a bidding war, and there's going to be some team that's going to be willing to go over the top for it, that it's going to be whatever that, like, it will be one of the most historical trades in the history of the NFL if the Texans actually make Deshaun Watson available. I mean, I remember hearing earlier rumors that the 49ers might be willing to get rid of Nick Bosa if they're willing to get, like, in that conversation, that they'd be willing to package some picks and throw Nick Bosa in there. And when you have a guy like this available, that's when there's just nothing that you can compare to. And I know that, you know, the Jets have the most picks, so they can make the most compelling offer. But when the amount of teams that are going to be interested in this come into the Texans are going to have a group of teams. Everyone's going to be willing to try to one up each other, and they'll be able to go to Deshaun Watson and say, which of these do you want to play for, kind of thing. And they'll be able to send them there. Now, conceivably, yes, they could say that the Jets offer is so much better that your option is you either get traded to the Jets or you stay here with us. Like, that could honestly be something that comes through, that, you know, that Nick Bosa offer from the 49ers isn't there. The Panthers giving up Christian McCaffrey and then some isn't there. You know, the Washington football team is not going to be willing to give up what they want to give up. And suddenly the Jets offer is so good that the Texans say, look, we got a 25-year-old quarterback that we want to keep. So you're either going to go play for the Jets and we're going to get this return haul, or you're going to stay with us and we'll see what happens with it. So, well, I think it's going to be fascinating to watch play out. Right now, everything I've heard is what other people have heard, which is that the Texans are sticking to their guns, that they don't want to trade Deshaun Watson. Now, will that change? We'll see. And I think it might, especially if Watson keeps holding to his guns, that he's not there. Now, the one thing I will say, last point, is that his agent, David Mulgeta, came out and said that Deshaun doesn't have any plans to hold out, that he doesn't have any plans to hold out If he's gonna be on this roster, he'll be there at training camp, he'll be there at OTAs, he'll be there at minicamp if they are there because of the pandemic. We'll see. But if he's willing to report to camp, he's not forcing anyone's hand. Like he's saying, I want to be traded, I don't want to be here, but if you keep me, I'm still going to report and give my teammates my all. So that kind of, I mean, it's not like it's not getting ugly, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, we'll certainly see. This actually just in, as we were just discussing that from Ian Rappaport, he says the Jets are planning to complete their evaluations of the top quarterbacks in the NFL draft before making any decisions on Sam Darnold. Sources say that includes pro days and interviews. While they've received real interest in Darnold, they want to get a full quarterback picture first, which makes total sense. That you want to know where you're going, but it's also the little thing in there also is they've received real interest in Darnold. So it's interesting. And you wrote a story about how Wentz's trade could affect Darnold. And the conclusion of that story on The Athletic, you can check it out, was that it really won't. Wentz goes for, the 2021 third round pick, 2022 pick, which probably becomes a first rounder if Wentz plays, if he plays 75% of the Colts snaps, which you would think would happen, it becomes a first rounder, otherwise a second rounder. But you don't think that trade affects Darnold, and it seems like the Jets are going to take their time here between now and draft day figuring out what to do with Darnold.
Yeah, and that's more again, that's not necessarily my opinion. I just make calls on it. Like that's just because that was my first. It's almost like when certain things, like when Jared Goff went, and it was like when Jared Goff and the Matt Stafford trade went down, it was, okay, I'm going to make a call to people I know around the league. Does this impact the Jets? And is there the immediate, you call people that know, like I'm a reporter, right? Like that's what I do. But it's like, I call the people that know more than me. I call the people that are executives and the people that are agents and the people that are more tied into making these decisions, not reacting to these decisions like I am. And I see what the hell they say. And the one thing that I heard from somebody that I trust a lot is, no, it does not impact Sam Darnold. Now, the reasoning for this, and this is where I know I had a ton of, Rich and Samini and I were texting each other the other day, like when I started having all these in my mentions, and people like, yeah, Connor, down with Rich, your way to refute his report was that Rich came out and said, like, this impacts Sam Darnold's trade because the best he's going to get now is probably a 2 and a 4. I tweeted out, this doesn't impact Sam Darnold's trade. He's going to get a 2. So we were saying this, like, if you
same thing, right?
Exactly. It was just the way it was semantics. It was basically like if you went into, if you thought, okay, well, if Carson Wentz goes for 2 first-round picks and then some, Sam Darnold can get at least a 1, right? And then all of a sudden, Wentz only goes for a conditional 2 and a 3. Well, obviously, Sam's not going to get a bona fide, no doubt, first-round pick because of what Carson Wentz just went for. If you went in with that mindset, then yes, this did impact it. When I was making calls before the Wentz trade about Sam Darnold, and when I was making calls when the Wentz trade looked like it was going to go down, and then after the Wentz trade went down, I was continually told by multiple people, both executives, agents, and scouts, that Sam's value is a second-round pick. Like that's where you kind of start with Sam Darnold. It's not going to be a 4. It's not going to be a 5 like it looked like it might be last year. There's enough people around the NFL that look at his contract because he's still in his rookie deal, that see the fact the Jets haven't surrounded him with talent or the poor coaching that he's received, that he was the number 3 pick in the draft not long ago, and a lot of people believed he was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft to the Browns not long ago, including the Jets. They look at all those things and say, we can fix Sam, and we can do what the Jets couldn't do, and we'll be able to do that. So he has value for that reason, and it because of his struggles, because of his issues, because of his problems that he's had throughout his career, and the lack of production that he's had throughout his career. Obviously, he's not going to fetch more than that. But I've always been told second-round pick. That's where, and if you can get enough teams in on it, maybe you can get a second-round pick and then some. If you can really up the ante and you can really get a lot of teams going, maybe you can get a late 1, but it's probably going to be a second-round pick. So when Carson Wentz got traded before it, and I said, and somebody told me second-round pick, and then he gets traded, and I call someone, and they're like, no, second-round pick is still Sam's value. Well, to me, that means his stock hasn't really changed. So Wentz didn't really impact that because before Wentz went, Darnold was probably going for a 2. And after Wentz went, he's probably still going for a 2. And now what Ian has reported is kind of what's been in line with what we've been saying for a very long time. And it's what Joe Douglas has said publicly and what Robert Saleh has said publicly, is that we are not going to rush into any decision. We are going to evaluate all options, and then we're going to make a decision that's best for this team. Now, I will say that the fact that this is going to go through interviews, and this is going to go through pro days, and this is going to go through the different looking combine than what we're going to have this year, it does mean that the Jets obviously are not sold on Sam Darnold. I mean, if you're sold on a quarterback, you don't do the research. And I remember writing a column about this several years ago when the Jets had just drafted Christian Hackenberg in the second round. The next year, Mike McCagnon was doing an absurd amount of research on Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes and Mitch Trubisky and all these guys and looking at them and evaluating them. And I remember writing a column like, if the Jets were convinced that Christian Hackenberg was a franchise quarterback, they're not going to do all of this research on these other quarterbacks. And it's something very similar to right now. If the Jets are convinced that Sam Darnold is a franchise quarterback, they're not going to be doing all of this research to see if there's a better franchise quarterback out there in Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. And obviously Deshaun Watson is the white whale of like, you know, if you can get him, you can get him, but it's almost like he's always going to be elusive. And it's the anomaly. Like he is the anomaly where you just take him out of the equation because you can get him, you go and do whatever you can to get him. But with Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, you're looking to see if they're going to be a franchise quarterback. If you're doing that and you go through these, and we've said this over and over, if you go through these interview processes, if you go through and you talk to Wilson and you talk to Wilson's coaches and you go back to his high school coaches and you talk to these guys and you get a stamp of approval that there are no personality red flags, there are no injury red flags, he is going to be a franchise quarterback, he has franchise quarterback potential. I don't know how you look at all that and then look at what Sam did and still roll with Sam. So the only way that I believe the Jets stick with Sam Darnold in 2021 is if they evaluate Justin Fields and they evaluate Zach Wilson and believe that neither of those guys is a franchise quarterback. That's the only way. Because if they evaluate them and think that they are a franchise guy, you draft whichever one you believe is a franchise quarterback, period. No questions asked. You draft him and you say, that kid's going to be my franchise quarterback. I'm going with him and I'm running with him, and that's how it's going to work. If you evaluate him and say they're not, that's when you stick with Sam and you trade back. And that's honestly what I would do. I wouldn't draft anyone at number 2. I'd move back.
All right, well, we are going to discuss more on the quarterback situation. But first, we have a message from Magic Spoon. I spent my vacation, like I said, watching a lot of TV and eating Magic Spoon. Magic Spoon.
What a vacation.
Yes. And because, you know, what better than something tasty, but also healthy for you? Magic Spoon has released a brand new variety pack, now featuring peanut butter. They released peanut butter as a limited edition flavor in 2020, and it's sold out 3 times. Peanut butter has gotten so much love that they decided to keep it as a permanent and add it to the bestsellers variety pack, which also includes frosted, fruity, and cocoa. I'm so excited to try the peanut butter. I love peanut butter. Magic Spoon has 0 grams of sugar, 13 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving, and only 140 calories. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, which is my favorite part, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. So if you want to try some Magic Spoon, go to magicspoon.com/wait to grab a variety pack and try it today. And be sure to use our promo code WAIT at checkout to save $5 off your order. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember, get your delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/wait and use the promo code WAIT to save $5. Thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this episode.
For a certain kind of... Go ahead.
Can you get someone to GIF for me? Marissa going, peanut butter! I need that one GIF or GIF and sent to my DMs now so I can pin that one to my profile page. Ever since somebody gets so done. I don't think I put, we have one of those little bones for my dog that's all hollowed out. We put peanut butter in that and freeze it for her so it'll keep her occupied for a while. I don't think Lucy gets as excited about that peanut butter bone as Marissa just did about her peanut butter Magic Spoon.
I love peanut butter. Oh, it's so good. So yeah, try your Magic Spoon today and get $5 off with the promo code WAIT.
All right. Well, for a certain kind of sports fan, the most important part of the game isn't always who wins and loses, whether you're sweating out a late field goal to hit the over or watching nervously as a 3-pointer in garbage time makes or breaks your 4-leg parlay. Having skin in the game completely transforms the fan experience. And that's why The Athletic is excited to announce the launch of its exclusive U.S. partnership with BetMGM and its new sports betting hub. Sports betting coverage at The Athletic will deliver all the insights, analysis, and original reporting subscribers have come to expect, plus fully integrated live odds and special offers from BetMGM. So even though Super Bowl 55 is now behind us, there's plenty of great action out there, whether you're talking NBA, NHL, college basketball, golf, and soon enough, Major League Baseball. Right now, BetMGM is offering Can't Wait listeners a risk-free first bet up to $600. Just sign up for BetMGM.com and use the bonus code TAWAIT to take advantage of the special offer from the king of sportsbooks. This offer is for new customers. That's a risk-free first bet up to $600 at BetMGM.com with the bonus code TAWAIT. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Nevada, and Virginia. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. And 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. In Tennessee, call or text the red line at 800-889-9789. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Promotional offer not available in Nevada. All right, back to the Jets.
Gambling problem. I've got a stock market problem right now. I'm all in on that. I didn't go to the moon. Unfortunately, I missed the trip to the moon with GME and AMC. My rocket went up and crashed right down. But I'm enjoying some of these other ones, man. I'm liking something funky's going on with this is Connor day trading global right now, but something funky's going on with Royal Caribbean. That stock's up like $20-25 the last couple of days. That was like one of the first ones I bought when I was like, I'm going to do my own stock trading like right after the pandemic, because I saw that one plummet. I was like, let's just buy it, like buy 10 shares, 10 shares and just hold it and see what happens. And it's been like, it would go up a little bit, then come back down. And it had always been a little bit more than what I paid, but nothing big. It's up to like $87 a share now. And it was like 60 and 50 like 2 weeks ago. It's wild. So I'm enjoying watching that one grow.
Cruising, coming back.
And our buddies, are our buddies DraftKings still? Are we moved on? Okay, I'm not going to talk about that one then. Yeah, but Boeing, big into Boeing. Boeing's been going up.
Boeing's having a rough day today.
They're having a rough time today, though.
Yeah.
Who are they? I see them. They're up 193.
Okay. Well, they had some engine troubles late last week.
Again on that damn flight.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's that. All right, never mind. Stock down. Definitely don't go there. Stick with Royal. Stick with Royal Caribbean.
We got some more quarterback talk.
Yeah, back to the Jets. Just one more thing on the quarterbacks, and then we'll move on. And this is because you talk about a second-round pick for Darnold. That's the asking price. But in his last mock draft, Dane Brugler actually threw kind of a wrench into this, kind of a twist. Mm-hmm. Instead of a second-round pick, how about moving up in the first round? And his theory on the mock draft was that they could send Sam Darnold to the 49ers, move up from 23 to 12 in that first round, also get a second round pick in 22. To me, Connor, that's even better than a second round pick, right? You're not getting an extra player, but the value to move from 23 to 12, it's pretty good. I think that's a neat way to look at it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a unique one. And actually, I remember when that trade went out, I reached out to somebody over in the AFC NFC West, about that. Like to say like, and the guy told me, he goes, well, he's one of the people who helped me out with that story on LaFleur's offense, who's obviously is the Shanahan offense that he's going to be bringing over. And he was telling me, he goes like, honestly, I think that's a good home for Sam. He goes like, I think that Sam can function really, really well in that style of an offense. He goes like, people aren't lying about that. And people aren't joking about, Sam's a good fit for Shanahan. It's true. I mean, the story is still up on The Athletic if anyone wants to read. But what that offense needs for a quarterback to be successful is mobility, the ability to throw on the run, the ability to make some plays off script, kind of to come around the side and to make those throws. And then what takes the scheme to the next level, what also makes it easier is throwing to spots. So you don't have to necessarily read a defense because you're throwing to a spot and the receiver's eventually going to be in that spot. So between that, which takes read progressions back a level and makes it easier on the quarterback, which reading a defense is something Sam struggled with anyway. Obviously, we've all seen Sam have success throwing on the move, and that's something that he does really well. He's mobile and elusive within the pocket. He fits that scheme. Now, what takes that offense to the next level is when you can get a quarterback that can make the throws deep down the field. And you can get the guys that when he is forced to stand in the pocket, because that offense is all based on play action, get out and move, play action, get out and move. When you do have the quarterback that is forced to stay within the pocket, he can attack down the field and take advantage of the defense that way and avoid the turnovers. That's something that Jimmy Garoppolo has not been able to do in San Francisco, which is why when teams play San Francisco, the goal is always to shut down the run, keep Jimmy in the pocket and make Jimmy beat you. If you had a quarterback that you couldn't say, I want to make the quarterback beat me, well, that offense is basically unstoppable. And that's why with Sam, you don't know, because he's been turnover prone during his 3 years with the Jets. He's never been able to consistently hit plays deep down the field. That's not something he's been able to do too much throughout his career. So, he'll be a better fit for that kind of an offense than a Garoppolo is, which is why he'll work with LaFleur or he would work with Shanahan. But can you make it even better? And if Shanahan believes in it and is confident enough in his system with that positive arrogance and that I know my system can work with a player with this skill set, it does make some sense for the 49ers to say, you know what? Let's cut Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll free $25 million in cap space. We'll give up those draft picks to get Sam in here. We now approved the quarterback position at about a $20 million. We improved our quarterback position and saved $20 million in salary cap space. We've got him under team control for next year if we want a fifth year option, and we can also tag him if we want, and then we can start moving forward. Now, obviously, if Sam Darnold's going to work so well for Shanahan and his offense, why wouldn't he work so well with the exact same system in New York? So we'll see if it works. But I do think that during the draft, if the Jets say, I'm taking Zach Wilson, and they turn in their draft card with Zach Wilson's name on it, and Zach Wilson is now their quarterback at number 2, I think it does make sense to say, okay, let's try to get up a little bit. If we really like, I think it was Rashawn Slater was the one that Brugler had the Jets trading up to get, if I'm not mistaken. If they see an offensive lineman or they see a pass rusher or they see a corner, like maybe Patrick Surtain slides a little bit, right? If they see one of those guys and they say, let's go up and get him, moving Sam to help get to that position, like a Sam in the 23 to get the, blah, blah, blah. I think that does help round out the roster even better. It's something that's an interesting scenario that isn't being talked about too much, but can absolutely come into play here and be an effective team building means for the Jets.
All right. Since we last were on the podcast, Robert Saleh has finalized most of the coaching staff, all set. A lot of minor coaches added. Well, safeties coach Marquand Manuel added. Tony Oden added as the cornerbacks coach. Mike Rutenberg, linebackers coach. Lots of those pieces. The big ones were obviously already taken care of. Although I don't know if when we last did the show, if Brant Boyer was officially coming back. He is now a special teams coordinator. Yep. But really, Connor, it comes down to, and you're going to be writing about this, LaFleur and Ulbrich are the big pieces, obviously, the new coordinators with this team.
Yeah, we got a story. It's been a lot of heavy lifting, so it's taken a little bit longer than I expected. But we do have a story running on The Athletic this week, and it's every single member of the Jets coaching staff, a breakdown of that guy. So it's not only offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, but every, the quarterbacks coach, the running backs coach, the linebackers coach, all of the assistant coaches, all those guys. We've got a story coming up on The Athletic, probably Thursday, maybe Wednesday. Tuesday, we're running a free agency story. So it might either be Wednesday or Thursday, but it'll be this big coaching story. And it's not only the background of where these guys have been before, what they're working with on the Jets roster, but the cool part about working here at The Athletic is that we have a beat writer for just about every single NFL team. There's a couple that writers who do multiple things, whether it's college and pro, like we have down in Jacksonville, but there's basically these guys that are covering, guys and women who are covering all of our teams. So it was kind of cool to reach out to, Matt Barrows and say, okay, what do you know about Mike LaFleur? And he's the guy who covered him when he was in San Francisco, and he was able to give me, a graph, 2 graphs on this guy. So I was able to do that for every single coach, just about every single coach on the Jets roster. There were a couple ones that Saleh brought over from college, like from some of those like Western Michigan or something like that, who don't have any NFL experience, and we don't have a Western Michigan beat writer. So it's been a little tough to dig up those like personal anecdotes there. But there's a lot of like cool stories in there. And I think things that people will want to read and they'll enjoy reading about, the different coaches that the Jets are bringing on. And like I said, it's a story that's definitely coming this week. I don't know which day. I just got to put some finishing touches on it, write a lead, and fill out a couple more information graphs, but it'll be ready to go. And I think you guys will like it. Like an example of one of the ones that I think was really, really cool is John Benton is the guy that the offensive line coach that the Jets hired. And I reached out to Matt Barrows, who obviously covered him when he was in San Francisco. And he said during end of season practices, he'll bring out his electric guitar and play AC/DC during warmups. Now, I don't necessarily how much AC/DC he's going to be shredding when it's awful cold here in Florham Park. It's a little different out there in San Francisco sometimes towards the end of the season, but I think that's kind of cool. So that's like some of the little nuggets and stuff you're going to get within the story, knowing that the Jets' new offensive line coach likes to shred some AC/DC during practices. So look for that kind of towards the end of this week, and I think it'll give fans a nice inside look at the very many coaches, a lot of new faces too, that Saleh is bringing with him to help out with his staff.
The Jets did not hire friend of the podcast Duke Manyweather as their offensive line coach for 2021. No, he's
I think,
busy.
dude, honestly,
he's working with
what you were saying
right now. So
seriously though, but I think he probably does even better when he's having a job like that. Like when you're training all these guys privately, I think you're doing sometimes a little bit better, and that's also job security wise is also quite a bit better when you're doing it that way. Than so if he's him, I don't know if I would want to necessarily take a team job. A little more pressure there than what he's doing now, which is probably not as much fun.
All right, so we've gotten a lot of questions, so we want to get to some of those in the chat, also on Twitter. No surprise, some of them also having to do with quarterbacks. Here's an interesting one, Connor. Is there any truth to Wilson being QB1 on some teams' boards, or is it just smoke to drive up the trade price for the Jets and Miami's top pick?
I think that any team that has Zach Wilson number one on their board is that every team realizing that Trevor Lawrence is not an option, and that it's like, why when he's going to the Jaguars? Like, it's like he's the number one. He was going to be the number one pick. We're not picking number one. Yeah, we'll do our scouting, we'll do our homework, but why even put him on our board? Like that's how I would view it. Everyone that I've touched base with, every coach, every scout, every executive, every agent, I have not heard anyone that has said Zach Wilson is a better prospect than Trevor Lawrence. I have not heard it. Now, it doesn't mean that some people, some scout isn't looking at the tape and saying, no, I like that he does this and I like that, and he's going to be a better pro than Trevor Lawrence. I mean, absolutely. I mean, look, there were people that thought Mitch Trubisky was a better option and a better prospect than Pat Mahomes, and that there are people probably that thought Pat Mahomes was better than Mitch Trubisky, which seemed crazy during that draft. Look how it played out now. Now, what I will say is I've talked to people that like Zach Wilson a lot. I mean, I've talked to one guy, one agent who tried to represent him and was doing everything he could to find a way to be his representation. And he said, dude, I've watched the film. I've studied the homework. And the kid's going to be a star. He goes, I see Pat Mahomes like traits within Zach Wilson with what he's able to do with throwing the football, arm angles, escapability, making plays off script. He goes, I love him. And I've talked to people that are obsessed with Zach Wilson and that look at Zach Wilson and think he's going to be a franchise quarterback and a stud. I've also talked to people that have legitimate concerns with his personality. Like one agent I was talking to about Zach Wilson said that, there's kind of a little bit of a sense of entitlement there, and that's kind of something that rubbed him the wrong way when he met him for the first time. And that's, one of the things that turned him off. Now, other people don't feel that way, and other people do. He's a polarizing prospect, not necessarily on the field. Like, obviously people are going to say, he didn't play too much. He didn't play top tier talent. So that's an issue and that's a concern and blah, blah, blah. But off the field, he's polarizing, and that some people love him and aren't concerned with his personality. Other people are concerned and do have some worries about his personality. It's he reminds me of Josh Rosen a little bit in that respect of not as extreme. I mean, because I remember when Josh Rosen was coming out, I was told, like, one scout told me he's a dick, like just straight up, was like, I got an ass. I was like, oh, well, okay. I was like, that's a little extreme, and obviously it's kind of played out. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard that level of extreme with people not liking Zach Wilson. Just some people that were like, oh, he kind of comes from a situation where he's always had things available and that kind of a thing. So that'll turn some people off. It won't turn other people off. But no, I haven't heard that he's the quarterback one on anyone's draft board, just because Trevor Lawrence is the real deal. And he is the most surefire prospect I've seen and read of since Andrew Luck. And I talked to somebody who's a scout for the Colts who said that Lawrence will receive a higher grade than anyone in Indianapolis had on Luck. So, I mean, that's how good Lawrence is supposed to be, and everything that he checks and every box he checks and all that stuff. So I think anyone that has Wilson ahead of Lawrence is just because they're not even considering Lawrence an option. Whenever I hear quarterback stories about quarterbacks and the entitlement, I think of Cush from Jerry Maguire, Frank Cushman, right?
Yeah. Turning it around on him. The Jerry O'Connell character in that movie. All right. Some other stuff. Marcus Maye is obviously a free agent to be, and we're going to talk a lot about, between now and free agency, which is 3 weeks away at this point, who the Jets should target, but you also have to look within, right, and who you need to keep. And how about Marcus Maye? This one from Brian Labrizzi. Have we called Marcus Maye yet? Any news on the extending of him? No, so nothing specifically right now. The Jets obviously want him back, and Joe Douglas has said he wants him back. And after Joe Douglas makes that comment, Joe's made the comments about how he messed up the Robbie Anderson situation. And after he makes those comments about how he screwed up the Robbie Anderson situation, and now having a player that is very similar in a situation as Marcus Maye, where, okay, he's probably not great, but he's a good player, and he's a player that's well liked within the locker room, and he helps your team.
I find it very, very, very hard to believe that he's going to let Marcus Maye go. Now, the means that he goes to sign him, if you're Marcus Maye and the Jets come to you with a contract extension right now, why are you signing it right now? Like, you have the legal tampering period 3 days before free agency. That's when everyone else can call and contact you. So if the Jets come and say, hey, we're going to give you X years, X million, X guaranteed. Yeah, okay, that looks like a good deal. But there's also a really good chance that on the legal tampering period, the Indianapolis Colts call you and say, hey, we want to offer you $5 million more total and $3 million more in guarantees. And suddenly that's a better deal than the Jets were offering that you would have never known existed if you didn't just wait until the legal tampering period. The other situation that could come is you can get calls and contact from other teams, and these other teams call and contact you, and you realize, okay, the deals are either the same or not as good, so you go and you accept the Jets. But it doesn't behoove Marcus Maye to sign any deal before the legal tampering period because you just want to know what your worth is, and you're not going to know what your worth is until you are able to talk to other people available in the market. And with agents, normally this could have actually happened at the combine this week. That obviously is not going to happen anymore because the combine is going to be so different and so weird, and not everyone's going to be there. So those same conversations that would happen at bars and during dinner and off the record casual conversations, they're not going to happen anymore. But if I'm Maye, I'm at least waiting till then. And if you're the Jets, maybe you don't want to wait and you say, okay, let's hit him with the franchise tag. Now, I personally think transition tag is probably a little more likely for Marcus Maye than franchise. I don't know if the Jets are going to want to go as high as, I think that franchise tag for a safety could be north of $11 million, closer to $12 million, franchise tag for a safety. I don't know if the Jets are going to necessarily want to do that. They can do the transition tag, and that hits him with a $9 million contract instead. So I think that might be a little more likely for Marcus Maye. But either way, I wouldn't expect anything to happen until the legal tampering period or just after that, because if you're Maye, like I said, not from a Jets standpoint, the Jets would lock him up tomorrow if they could. If you're Maye, you're a free agent, you want to know what your worth is, and you kind of get that idea down during the legal tampering period.
You mentioned the combine, which is a kind of a big deal that hasn't been talked about too much, but beyond the free agents and talking to players around dinner and bars and all that sort of thing, there's also the draft implications. And we just talked about the Jets doing all they can to figure out what they think about these quarterbacks. But how much of a factor when you've talked to people, Connor, how concerned are people that the evaluation process is a little different? You still have the pro days and all the teams are doing pro days and you got to get to all those, but that's different than having all these players in one place for 3 days in Indianapolis.
It's more for the medicals. I mean, 40-yard dash times are kind of like, it's whatever. Like, some people put stock into that. I don't put any. If you can play football, you can play football. The big thing is you have all of those players in one spot to get all of your medicals done. And you also have all those players in one spot to talk to them in person, although it's limited and you can only do a certain number of interviews with a certain number of players, but you can still have, and you can do interviews at combines. The big thing is just the acceptance or the readily available, how available it is to just get every medical question taken care of during that time. I mean, the rest of it, okay, you want to see what a guy runs. I think the combine has become significantly more than what it was because of the access that NFL Network and them have. I mean, I remember for the first year, I was a kid, but I remember the first year the NFL Network broadcast the combine, and I had never even heard of it before. And watching it and seeing these players run, I mean, it's become a spectacle and it's become an event. And it's amazing how the NFL has turned that into not cash grab, but a viewership drawing event when it's literally just college players running drills. If you think about it, it's guys running 40-yard dashes and quarterbacks throwing to nobody. I mean, that's like ghost on air plays and receivers running the gauntlet. Yet you'll have millions and millions and millions of people tuning in to watch it. So the biggest thing, I don't think evaluation is impacted that much because you'll be able to watch these guys run their 40s at their pro days. Also, the vast majority of these college players who, unless they opted out, now have film from last year. It's not as much film as past seasons, but still college games were played, which we weren't sure that was going to happen a few months ago. So the fact that college games were played, you have film there, you have film from the previous seasons. You're obviously going to have positional drills and stuff like that at the pro days and some of it at the combine. The one thing that's just going to be hurting them is you're not getting all the medicals done right away. You would be able to immediately check off so many boxes just in 3 days of being down at the combine.
All right, back to the quarterbacks we go. This one from Manton. He says, wonder what happens to James Morgan. Is he still on the team in 21? Seems like a meaningless pick at this point. I think that's a little bit harsh. I would imagine he'll still be around. And we've said from the start, Connor, that it's a project and it's not about him someday being the Jets starting quarterback. It never was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Now, what I will say is that we talked earlier this show about how Sam fits in a Shanahan offense and how Sam fits in in a LaFleur offense because it's going to be a Shanahan offense. That's not James Morgan. Like the James Morgan skill set is not tailor-made for a Shanahan offense. It is not conducive to a Shanahan offense. I mean, what he does well is not necessarily the traits that you need within this scheme. I mean, he's a pro-style drop back immobile quarterback. He does not move. Like I remember talking to his college coach at where'd he go? Florida Atlantic, FAU, or where he transferred in. I did a story on James Morgan after the Jets drafted him, and I called his college offensive coordinator and did a big interview with him. And his offensive coordinator was saying basically that when they were looking on the transfer market for a quarterback to be their starter at FAU, they didn't want FIU. Mm-hmm. FIU. Okay. So FIU, when he was looking for the quarterback at FIU on the transfer market, it was, we don't need mobile. We don't need runner. We want a pro style drop back pocket quarterback. That's what we wanted. And that's what led them to James Morgan and eventually led them to bringing Morgan on. And he had a lot of success there at FIU and they had their success and all that stuff. I mean, he's not going to move. He's not going to make plays on the run. He's not going to escape people. He's going to drop back in the pocket, move a little bit like Tom Brady within the pocket, but then find the open guy. Now, that doesn't necessarily work within the Shanahan scheme. Now, what I will say is the reason why the Jets drafted him, like Tim said, was never to be this team's starting quarterback. They never envisioned a quarterback controversy between Sam Darnold and James Morgan. They drafted James Morgan because, as his offensive coordinator in college said, he's quote unquote a football dork, that he just loves this stuff. He loves the X's and O's. He loves the breakdown. He used to watch NFL games on Sunday, James Morgan. He would watch NFL games on Sunday with a bunch of index cards in front of him. And he would watch a play and be like, wow, I really like that play. He would then rewind it 5 times, write down what every single player would do, what the X did, the Y did, what left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, running back, all that stuff. He would then go to school the next day, get all of his receivers and offensive linemen together for a players-only practice and run through the plays that he had drawn out on cards. If the play didn't work, he threw the card out. If the play worked, he would then go to his coaching staff, the offensive coaching staff, and be like, hey, I just ran through these plays with these guys. It worked really well. I like this concept. I like what this did. Can we try to implement it in the offense? And they'd be like, okay, well, this will fit our terminology. If we call it this thing, we'll throw it in the playbook and we'll try to run it this week. So like, that's the kind of stuff that James Morgan would do. That's the stuff he loved doing. Adam Gase, Joe Douglas fell in love with that, said, man, he will be the perfect sounding board to have within our quarterback room and within our locker room to help Sam week by week, prepare Sam, help see things that Sam doesn't see, break down the film. And then if he has a couple good off seasons, he has a couple good spring trainings. He has a couple good training camps, has a couple good preseasons. We'll be able to take him and maybe flip him for a third. Or if if Sam gets hurt and he plays 4 or 5 games and has a Matt Flynn type game, maybe we can flip him for a second round pick. Maybe we can do those things with James Morgan, but that still carries some weight, even though he's not necessarily a scheme fit, that he'll still mentally be able to help, whether it's the rookie quarterback or whoever the Jets have in here. And it's not like he's costing too much money. So I think he'll be on the team in 2021. I don't know how much longer after that, but I also don't think he's like, oh, well, the Jets can draft a rookie. They can still keep trying to develop James Morgan just because I don't think he's too much of a fit. But the Jets aren't going to want to lose his brain. And remember, Joe Douglas still picked him. And I know Adam's gone, and Adam was the one who really, really loved him. But Joe's not just going to cut a guy that he drafted right away, especially when he doesn't cost any money.
Yeah, and all that said, it is a fair point that he was a 4th round pick, maybe a little high, but nonetheless. All right, next one.
Well, the issue, Tim, there was the issue there. The issue with him drafting 4th round is that, and we've said this before, is that the Jets had other holes. I don't have a problem with them drafting a quarterback like this to put in the quarterback room, be a sounding board, be basically another coach in there, and then try to flip for a 2nd or 3rd round pick. I have no problem doing that when you're the Saints, when you're the Chiefs, when you're the Packers, when you're the Patriots, when you're a team that is perennially good, not the Patriots this year, but like the perennially good. You've got the team where like the Bills could do it this year, where you have someone, you develop them, you flip them, you kind of just put them in your farm system, grow them, flip them for picks. I get doing that. The problem with the Jets is that when they drafted James Morgan in the 4th round, they still had holes at receiver, offensive line, pass rusher, cornerback. Like they had so many other needs and so many other holes that it's hard to imagine that the best player on their board, there wasn't a best player available at a position of need that would have been better than drafting a developmental quarterback that in your perfect world never plays a regular season snap over the next 4 years. Like there had to have been a better option there. That was the problem with drafting James Morgan. Not necessarily that you took James Morgan, it's that you took James Morgan over players that might help you on the field. To a much more extreme extent, it was like when the Eagles drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round with Carson Wentz as your quarterback. Like, why don't you draft a player to help your quarterback or make the roster better instead of somebody that best case scenario is playing 4 or 5 snaps a game? Like for him as a Wildcat.
Well, now he's their quarterback, so.
Yeah.
All right, this more a statement than a question, but from John Martin, it's realistically possible that the entire Jets 2018 roster will be gone next year if we don't sign Poole, Maye, Jenkins, Hewitt, and move on from Sam. I think Basham would be the only one left. Kind of crazy. And obviously doesn't speak well of the past regime, but you also see a lot of this when you have a new front office come in. They want their people, but it is eye-opening for sure to see that.
Yeah, it's actually stunning. I never even thought. I've looked at their drafts. I've never looked at the wholesale roster, but that is wild. Now he said Basham's probably not going to be back next year because he's a free agent, and they expect that they're going to have a pretty strong market for him, and he's going to go somewhere he can play. And he's more of a 34 outside linebacker. He's not a defensive end, and he could maybe play the Sam position for the Jets, that strong side outside linebacker, but the Jets are probably going to want somebody that has a little bit more coverage ability than what Basham does. When he has some to pick his hand up, but for the most part, he's a pass rushing, run stuffing 34 outside linebacker. So I don't think he really fits within the scheme anymore. But yeah, that's wild. If Maye's gone, Jenkins gone, Hewitt, Sam Darnold, that's crazy. I never even thought about it. But that's wild. But that just goes to show you how bad this team's drafting was under the McCagnon regime. I mean, they're out of players in their 2015 draft. 2016, all they have left is Jenkins. 2017, they have Maye, and I think that's it. And 2018, I got to go through and look at it all, but I know that one's not looking great either. I can't remember when they drafted Fadukasi. I think that might have been 18. I can't remember exactly when they picked him up, but I mean, it's just, you can't swing and miss that much. I mean, you at least need to find players that are good, but the wild thing about the Jets players is like half these guys aren't even in the league anymore. Like I've written the number before. I'd have to go back and look. It's like of the 65 players they've drafted, 30 of them aren't even in the NFL. Like, where's our Darius Stewart? Like the guy, like he was a 3rd round pick for the Jets, and he's not like, he didn't even play a regular season game after the Jets cut him, and the Jets cut him after having him on the roster for 1 year. Like, you can't. It's tough for good teams to respond after swinging and missing like that, let alone teams that have been out of the playoffs for 10 years. It's wild.
Yeah, Fadukasi 6th round pick in 2018.
Okay, so let's end this on a positive note and let's look ahead. This question is from Twitter, from the Robert Saleh fan club. What are some non-top name players that do you think the Jets will sign? So, we looked back on, 2018. Let's look ahead and some guys that could make a difference in this team in 2021.
I need a haircut. You see that? Whew. That's some bad bedhead.
That's what you think of the off the radar. So not the big names, not the number one receiver, not the, those guys, some of the filling out the roster type guys.
Yeah. Williams, the corner from Arizona, or not Arizona, I'm sorry. San Francisco. I think he's a guy, Quan Williams. I know that he's a big fan. He has a big fan in Saleh. Saleh likes him a lot. He would fill a need. His issue is injuries, that he tore his ACL in 2019 and missed a chunk of 2020 because of that injury. So he hasn't played, but when he has played, he's looked like a starting corner. And depending on how the Jets evaluate and look over Bryce Hall and Bless Austin, they could look at, okay, we still need a number 1 corner, but Quan Williams could be our number 2 if he's healthy and stuff like that. So he could be a low risk signing to bring aboard. Janu Smith, the tight end from Tennessee, I think he could be one. Trey Burton from Indianapolis is another one. I know that Joe Douglas has experience with him in Philadelphia. He was the quarterback on the Philly special. Injuries have kind of been an issue for him because he went to Chicago and then he went to Indy now, but he's a good receiving option at tight end, which is what Shanahan and LaFleur's offense needs, is they want guys that can catch the ball and run after it. And Trey Burton's not a blocker, but he's kind of that guy that could come in and be a better version of Trevon Wesco, and that, he's not going to get like the receiver. He can line up at fullback, he can line up at halfback, he can line up in the slot, he can line up at tight end, he can do a lot of things there. And the big one that I don't know if you loop him in as a top tier option, but Curtis Samuel is the one that I always go back to. And I made a couple calls on him because he's the hybrid. He's not a receiver. He's not a running back. He's like that weird put him on the field and he makes plays, and you get the ball in space and he'll make plays, and he'll make some plays down the field. He can also make plays out of the backfield as a runner. Like, he can do so many different things in this league year where so many teams are going to be over the cap and so many teams are going to be cap strapped. There are very few teams that can afford to sign a not really running back, not really receiver like Curtis Samuel. Those teams aren't there that much because there aren't that many teams that have salary cap space like the Jets do to go out and make a signing like that. So I know I called someone and they said that they basically had Curtis Samuel pegged to the Jets already because he's a playmaker. He fits well within LaFleur's offense, and the Jets have the salary cap space to sign him. So he's somebody that I believe they'll go out there and get and make a run. Kind of flipping this question on its head, though, is the guys that I wouldn't target. I know I saw stuff out there about like Will Fuller. Like, I wouldn't, if I was the Jets, I wouldn't go anywhere near Will Fuller. I'd be worried about the injury concerns. Juju Smith-Schuster is another one. He's a guy that he's a slot receiver. He's a slot receiver with maturity concerns. And I don't think that he's going to be worth the money that the Jets would have to go out there and get him. Now, if they cut Jamison Crowder and they recoup $10 million and then they look, okay, we're getting rid of Jamison Crowder, getting $10 million more in our books, we can now go sign Juju and Allen Robinson, or Juju, Curtis Samuel, and somebody else, and Kenny Galladay, or Juju, this guy, and Corey Davis. We can go out and get those guys because now we have an extra $10 million to spend because we got rid of Crowder. Then okay, fine. But if you're keeping Crowder, I wouldn't go and sign Juju because he's not an outside receiver. And also, aside from that one massive year he had, his rookie or second season, the year where he caught like 100 balls with Antonio Brown split wide, where he was basically seeing one-on-one coverage. Since Brown left, he hasn't been that great. Like, he's been fine, but he hasn't been that great with the Steelers. So he's somebody that I would stay away from.
All right, good stuff. That's going to do it for us. Make sure you rate and review the show on Apple. I think we're getting close to 200 ratings on Apple. So 5 stars there if you have a chance. And if you want to save on a subscription to The Athletic, you can do that by going to theathletic.com/the Can't Wait podcast. Right now, you can sign up for The Athletic for just $3.99 a month. That's going to do it for us. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Our off-season cadence is generally every 2 weeks. If something big happens between now and then, we'll definitely hop in with an emergency podcast. Now that Marissa's back from vacation, that's very, very possible. Yeah. So you may hear from us before that, but otherwise, we'll talk to you then. Have a great week, everyone.